Welcome back to By the Bookshelf for this week. I'm glad you are joining me once again. Last week on Tuesday evening, our elders and deacons and some of our staff gathered together here on the church campus on the front yard, just like those old lawn services from Derry's past, and gathered to worship God together, the first time physically together to worship since March 8th. It was a joyous time to be able to actually see each other, not just looking at a screen. It was a nice opportunity to be able to worship together. We had some Derry brass playing some tunes, Dan on the electric piano, Mark Werner helping lead some hymns. We are opening up those services to the congregation starting July 28th. You can now sign up using the Google form that was in the e-news, or if you're unable to do that, you can call or email the church office. Now, we are limiting the number of people who can come to 80. Now, there are a few reasons for that. We had about 40 at our last one, kind of spread out, and we saw we could probably easily double this and still maintain social distance. Now, in reality, we could put a lot more people on the church lawn, but where the problem is the sound system only has a limited range. And we're using the courtyard speakers, which only point in one direction. Even using those, many people on Tuesday complained they couldn't really hear very well, both when I was talking and during the singing. So we're going to try to add some extra external speakers, pointing in a different direction, but even then, we can't cover the sound of the entire front lawn. So we need to kind of keep it to a certain area. The further closer to the road you sit, car noise can definitely be a problem. The train is a big problem. You can't hear anything when the train comes through. Derry Brass is going to have a couple songs prepared, so if a train does come through, they'll just kind of play that until the train passes. It's outdoors, you never know what's going to happen, but we're going to do our best. We have tables set up at all the different ways you might enter the area with some hand sanitizer. We have extra masks in case somebody forgets a mask. It is required you wear a mask to attend the service. And this time we're going to have just simple sheets of paper with the order of service and the lyrics to the simple songs. We're trying to pick really simple songs, familiar songs, basic refrains that we'll be able to all sing together wearing our masks at the same time. So there won't be a lot of singing. The service takes about 30 minutes. We don't want it to be too long. It's been hot recently. We don't want people out in the heat too long. We recommend you bring a water bottle of some kind just to kind of keep hydrated. And we don't want people to linger too much after the service either. You can talk to one another, but again, try to maintain that social distance. We continue to kind of work on improving these services as we go, trying to find new ways to make the service better, where you can hear better. I can have more engagement. But they're a work in progress. We haven't done one of these outdoor services in this way in a long time. But it is kind of fun to pull from that history of having these outdoor services. We're going to do 4 of them, 4 weeks. Everyone can sign up for one of the 4. We want to make sure, because we're limiting it to 80, that everyone who wants to come to one service is able to come to one service. Now you can check back on the Tuesday of the service and see, hey, are there any spots left available? If on Tuesday there are still spots available, you can then sign up to come that Tuesday as well. We're not sure what the demand will be. After these 4 services, we're probably going to do a congregational survey to get a sense of, do we need to do more of these outdoor services? Was just coming once enough? Was the service engaging enough where you want to keep coming back each week? We may ask other questions about, are you comfortable coming into the building in a larger group at this point? Or are you not? If we decide to have an indoor service sometime in the future, would you come to that? If we had an indoor service that was very similar in style to our outdoor service, of being about 30 to 45 minutes, very limited singing and things like that, would you be interested in coming on, say, a Saturday night at 5 o'clock? Which day is better, Tuesday or Saturday? We want to be able to start asking some of those questions after we run through these 4 weeks of these outdoor services. Now, we are still kind of trying to figure out our way forward. And one thing we've been very careful about doing is trying not to overpromise, because things are constantly changing. We don't want to keep moving the goalposts, so to speak, but this is a very fluid situation. We've tried to make decisions that we can easily adapt as the situation changes as well. We don't want to overpromise and say, hey, we're going to get back on Sunday mornings by October 1st or something. It's not fair of us to make promises. And we love you too much to get your hopes up or promise something we can't deliver, or to bring you back when it may not be safe. We want to continue to make smart and wise decisions. In the midst of so much uncertainty, we believe in clarity. So we're trying to be very clear on what we're doing right now and what we're not doing right now. And that's why we said in June with the session, we're just not going to have indoor worship on Sundays, at least through the end of August. That way you have some clarity about what's happening and what's not happening. The session will again meet in August coming up in a few weeks, and we'll make further decisions. And we'll try to make decisions that are clear and allow for flexibility still. And we will probably again have those surveys out to you to kind of get a sense of where you're at. I've been talking with a lot of pastors around the country, reading articles. Some churches have begun to meet in person again on certain Sunday mornings or Saturday nights. Most of these churches are smaller, that have somewhat larger sanctuaries because their churches used to be larger, and they can almost have their whole congregation in their church and be socially distanced. And those churches often didn't have many live stream capabilities. Those churches are also in areas with very little virus infection rates at the moment. There are other churches I know that have gone ahead and said, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and plan not to meet until at least 2021. One of those churches is a mega church in Atlanta run by Andy Stanley. And he said, basically, he thought the best stewardship right now was to not have services because his church was so large, there was no way they could do contact tracing. They're in an area that still has a surging virus. They're able to do some small group outdoor gatherings, and they wanted to give the congregation clarity. And they also had a survey, and the vast majority of people in their church said, we're not ready to come back. And so they realized it wasn't a good use of resources to try to manage these indoor services as well. That's one reason we want to do a survey, to kind of get a sense of where you're at. We're also going to take into account where we're at as a community with the virus. So we want to make sure we're being very careful and deliberate about these choices we're making for the future. So we have a lot of options we're looking at. We are starting to discuss what indoor worship might look like. And we've talked about, could we do a Tuesday evening indoors in the sanctuary, kind of keeping that Tuesday evening worship service tradition going? Or would a Saturday at 5 o'clock to kind of mirror the engaged services be the best time for a potential indoor service? Whether that's in September, October, November, December, I don't know. Again, we're going to kind of look and see what things are happening at that time. But we want to kind of get some feedback from you as well. And we want to be clear on what our goals are and what may be able to happen and what won't be able to happen. So you may wonder, what are our goals? Why are we doing what we're doing? Well, I think number one, our goal is to be kind and loving to our neighbors and help our community through this virus. We want to put a lot of our focus into reaching out, helping the community, and helping our members. And right now, the best way it seems to do that is not to meet in person, in case we become an event that spreads the disease in this community, and it can have ripple effects going out. We don't want that responsibility of we helped cause further spread in the community. We don't want to cause anxiety for staff or for members who feel guilty that they think they should be coming. We don't always know what everyone in the church is doing, if everyone has been safe up until the point of coming to worship. There's no way to know all that. So our number one goal is to keep our church members safe and our community safe. We also want to be good stewards of the resources we have. is the best use of our time figuring out these ways of indoor worship, or is it outdoor worship and reaching out? Is it doing the live stream? We're so lucky that we already had this quality live stream in place, and hopefully you've seen all the improvements we've made to the live stream. With the ability to drop in videos, we're able to record people ahead of time and have so much more diversity in worship. For instance, this coming week is our Youth Sunday. And so we've gotten youth to record things that they can send in so they can do that at home. We're recording kind of a small group of youth do some stuff. There'll be singers who record earlier. Amanda Roosh will be in and doing the sermon. So we can do a Youth Sunday still with a lot of different youth involvement, but be able to do that in safe ways from a safe distance because we have this special technology. A lot of churches don't have the capabilities we have. And I've mentioned before, it's odd because most of the churches that have the capabilities for live stream that we have also have the capabilities of showing what's on the live stream in their church somehow, whether it's on a projector or a screen or something like that. We don't have that capability. So that's one of the challenges eventually of bringing people in on a Sunday morning. We couldn't do all that video ahead of time, and especially right now, singing, we don't want anybody singing live in the church because that virus lingers in the air longer. Studies are showing the majority of people getting infected are through that airborne delivery system. So all of our singing right now is either being done in a mask live, which is very rare, or we're pre-recording in ways that are safe. No one else is in that room for a long time afterwards. We're keeping as distant as possible, and we're getting that good music. We couldn't do that on a Sunday morning with people in the building right now because there'd be no way they could watch those videos. That's the main reason why we're kind of considering, if we make the step to in-person worship, we're going to start with doing something on a day other than a Sunday, so we can still give that good Sunday live stream experience, but potentially for those who really just need to be at the church, see each other, we may offer a different day for that. But we're starting with the outdoor services. 4 of them starting next Tuesday, the 28th. And from there, we'll see, do we do another 4? Do we do a couple week break and then do 4 as it gets cooler in September? We're going to look at all these things. The other day I was watching Frozen 2 with my daughter for the first time. One of the themes of the movie is, when the future is uncertain, you do the next right thing. Sometimes that's all we can do. We try to choose the next right thing. I'm a planner. I like to think 8, 10 moves ahead. And while I'm trying to do that to a degree in this, I also know I can plan everything out as much as I want, but things could change and those plans could get ruined. You know, the best laid plans of mice and men, they don't always work out. So we're trying to just do the next right thing. And that's one reason we decided, hey, let's try here in this place. Let's try to invite people to the church campus. Because we did hear that longing of just having that permission just to come back to church, to see people, to get that spiritual nourishment from the church here on the church grounds. And so we did that last week. We did it today as well, and people came in the morning from 10 to 11:30. We had some live music with hammered dulcimer and harp. We had guitars. We had singing and piano. People could just come sit in the shade and listen. We had that prayer walk set up around the church campus where you could learn more about the church, but also engage in prayer. We had a couple other little surprise activities I can't name on here because they're surprises for some people. So you're going to have to come next Monday to participate in that. Or if you're really curious, send me an email, give me a call. I'll let you know what it is, and you can participate and bring in that participation from home to the church. We thought that's the next right thing. We can keep it to smaller groups outside, socially distanced, but it allows people just to come in and have that connection. The next right thing after that is outdoor worship. We wanted to test it, see how it went. It went pretty well. We got some good suggestions from our elders and deacons on things we could do to make it better. We're implementing those. And again, that happens next Tuesday, the 28th. You can sign up online or call the church office. After that, we're going to do the next right thing. And I'm not sure what that will be yet. It'll be something based on how the virus is working, how our community's feeling, how you're feeling. Maybe that's more outdoor worship. Maybe we start doing some other Zoom activities. I've noticed for the most part, Zoom attendance for post-worship fellowship, for talking teas, for all of that has really started going down. I think there are a lot of reasons for that. Many of you are just kind of tired of Zoom. Other things are available to happen right now. You're able to get out more, so you don't need that digital connection quite as much. So we may look at stopping doing some of those things and putting our energies elsewhere. Often we have a Buzz Myers come in the fall, so we're looking at, okay, if we're not actually in the building, what's the best use of Buzz? Do we still use Buzz to do a Zoom class on Sunday morning, some other day of the week? Do we postpone them until we can get back in the building? And it's a large part determined on what we can do, but also what he's willing to do and his schedule as well. We'll try to think of ways to continue to serve and to care for you. We want to do the next right thing. And that's really what the task force is all about. And I wish I could share, we know exactly where we want to go and exactly the plan. We don't, because we're kind of treating this with a humility of we're not sure what next week is going to hold. Things seem to be changing so rapidly. Even understanding the disease, this is part of the problem with a novel coronavirus. There are no real experts. There are experts in infectious disease and all of that stuff. We should definitely listen to them. But no one's an expert on COVID-19 because it's new. We're learning things every day. So every expert at some point is going to get something wrong. And we shouldn't hold it against that person because it's brand new. No one knows. It's kind of like the weather to a degree. Every hurricane is different. And you have all these experts tracking where they think it's going to go. And they're always wrong because weather and patterns, they change. There's no way with 100% certainty to know what's going to happen. It's the same thing with the virus in a lot of ways. They can mutate, and no one can always predict the mutations. And you only have so much information to begin with, so you make the best recommendations you can based on the limited information, and then you make new recommendations and new recommendations. We're constantly learning new things, and those things are based on studies that, even though they might involve thousands of people, in the grand scheme of things, are still very limited studies. So some of the new studies show that if you don't have a real severe case of the disease, if you don't really have any symptoms, your antibodies may disappear in a couple months, which raises the question, well, is herd immunity even possible? Will a vaccine be long-lasting? Which is one reason why it has to go through a long period of testing. It may show that it works for a couple months, but will it work for a year? Or for 2 years? Is it going to be like the flu vaccine where you have to get a new one every year based on a predicted strand that's going to be worse? I don't know. New studies also show that over half of the people who have coronavirus with those symptoms end up having some kind of heart defects or problems as a result of that. Well, that's a scary new revelation. There's all these new studies that come out, and some may prove to be right, some may prove to not be what they think it is. And that's really difficult as we're trying to make good decisions for a community, for a nation. And I'm glad I'm not in the driver's seat on those things, trying to make these large decisions for states and nations based on such limited data. And everybody has a different philosophy on decision making. Some people want to play it safer. Some people don't. We're all in the same boat of having to make decisions that can greatly impact our lives without really knowing what's going to happen. It's like around school. We have these tough decisions. Do we send our kids to school full time? Do we do a hybrid model? Should we just keep our kids home and do virtual school? Do we do it through the school district? Do we pick a new school that's more used to virtual school? Every parent is thinking about this, and they all come at it from a different context. Some have the ability to stay home easier and be really big aid to their children in their education because they've been teachers before. Others aren't able to have anybody watch their kids because both parents are working and now they're trying to find some kind of childcare. Some they don't have the money to afford childcare because they're barely getting by right now, and school was a de facto childcare for a while. Everyone has a different context in which they're entering these decisions. Some people are teachers who are scared to go back to work because they have immunocompromised people at home. Some people are teachers anxious to get back. It's what they love to do. They want to see their students face to face. Some people are running private schools that serve underserved communities. They're worried that their school is going to be able to survive this, all their work that went into it. There are all these different entry points into the discussion based on people's individual contexts, trying to choose the next right thing for themselves. And I see all these posts about you should do this, school should do this. There is no one-size-fits-all solution because everybody has a different context and everyone just needs to choose what's the next right thing for them and then offer a whole lot of grace to everybody else, while also understanding other people's choices can impact us. That's this whole thing with masks. The fact that you choose maybe not to wear a mask can negatively impact me. And so again, we are interdependent on each other. We are yoked together. So we have to make the choices that are right for us, but can also help be right for each other. And that's not easy. That's not an easy place to be. It takes a lot of wisdom, a lot of humility, and a lot of grace. And we need to extend that grace to each other as business owners are trying to figure out what they can do. Teachers, school districts, parents, churches. We're all trying to figure this out. And there are some churches in this area that are pretty much following the exact same path we are. Others are choosing different paths. And again, their contexts are a little different. I think the church that may be most closely aligned with us, just as far as size, context, all of that, may be Grace United Methodist in Hummelstown. And looking at their reopening strategy, it's basically the same as ours. They're having their first outdoor worship this coming Sunday, July 26th. We're having our first outdoor worship 2 days later on a Tuesday evening. They've kind of basically said we're not going to do indoor Sundays till late September, early October, and even then it's no guarantee. We've said it's going to at least be through the end of August, and we're going to reevaluate after that. Some churches have parking lots that are really easy for drive-in worship. We don't have the parking lot that works for, but we do have the nice big front lawn with a lot of shade. So every church is also making decisions based on their context, their resources, their physical plants. Some churches have large windows they can open so they can get more ventilation in their sanctuary. We don't have any of that. Some churches are big sanctuaries with small congregations. Our sanctuary fits around 400 comfortably. That includes the choir loft. And the way our pews are, based on that 6 feet of difference, we can use about 24 of our pews. We can fit, with 6 feet apart, around 100 people or so in the sanctuary. We could maybe fit more if we had a really complex seating chart that was almost like a hostess station at a restaurant where we're very carefully putting people in the right spot, but that would take a ton of work and real-time data to be able to do that well. So the easiest solution is probably just to mark 24 pews that are safe and ends of the pew for small groups, so maybe 2 groups could sit on 1 pew. And some churches have movable chairs that they can easily put. Every context is different. So we're trying to do the next right thing. And in the midst of uncertainty, we're trying to provide clarity. And I know that can be frustrating because at times it may seem like we're not being able to give enough information. And again, we don't want to overpromise. We don't want to say one thing and then have to come back on here and backtrack and say, well, we thought this. We're not going to be able to do it. We're backtracking all of that. We've seen a lot of schools have to do that. They say one thing and then they have to pull it back, and that leads to disappointment. I often find when expectations aren't met, That's when there's greatest disappointment. So we don't want to set expectations here and then only deliver here. But it can be difficult. And I think one of the problems we see right now is all of these conversations, all of these challenges come at many of our core values. And I find the things that we get most upset about, most angry about, are when our core values are trespassed over, are violated. For instance, if you get really, really mad at a coworker or somebody who's always late and just not doing their work, it might really make you angry because one of your core values is maybe work ethic and coming in on time. And when you're doing that, and it's such a staple of who you are, and somebody else violates that, it makes you angry. And one of my core values I've found is just kind of common courtesy. So I get really mad when people cut in lines or aren't really efficient with their time. They come in late, not caring about the time of others who have come in on time to get things working. That really angers me sometimes. So I think right now, all these different decisions that are being made sometimes are kind of trespassing, violating other people's core values, whether it's care for each other, it's health, it's safety, it's use of resources, it's individual freedom, it's the ability to kind of do what we want. We all have different core values. And when other people seem to be living in opposite ways, it makes us angrier. I think that's part of the problem right now. All these different choices that people are making in some different ways can violate each of our core values, and so we're getting more and more angry at each other. I really try not to read comments on like Facebook news articles, especially in our area when something's posted, but sometimes I do. I don't know why, but I do. And I see that anger coming out from all sides where you aren't doing it this way, and this way is very centered to who I am. It's violating my core value. You're acting this way. And so they lash out in anger and vice versa. So when you find yourself really getting angry, upset over someone's actions, evaluate why are you angry? And it might be because that person seems to be violating something that's very valuable to you, a core value of care, courtesy, freedom, autonomy, independence, work ethic, health and safety, whatever it is. And then we have to kind of figure out, okay, how can I manage those emotions? How can I maybe share that, especially if it's somebody you know and love? How can you share how their choices are affecting you negatively in a way that brings dialogue together? Because often what we're doing right now is saying, I'm done with you forever because you've made this choice. And we don't always realize that choices we make can have negative impacts on others for a wide variety of reasons. So we have to kind of consider why does this anger us so much? Why is this our core value? How can we express that to someone else? Because here's the reality. This time can be a time we can come together more, learn to rely on each other, trust one another, find common solutions to our common problems, or we can divide more and more as we see divisions over our thoughts on fall sports and school openings and churches and all this stuff. Sadly, a public health situation has become politicized to the point of partisanship, where almost what you think about the virus reflects your political agenda, which I never really will understand fully, but it's the way we're at right now. And we can either let those divisions further divide us about, well, you're doing this, I'm not going to talk to you anymore, or I think this way about schools, you think this way, I think this way about church, you think this way, I think this way about business, you think this way. All of these things can further fracture us. Or we can figure out a way to come together and solve these problems together. And that may involve compromise to a degree. It may involve creative solutions. Instead of either or, it might be both and. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. But I see the biggest threat right now, along with the virus itself, is that we can get further and further divided. churches can be divided over what they think the church should do, and then say, well, I'm done with that church because they aren't doing what I want to. I'm going to go find a church that's acting the way I think they should act. Or even just members of churches, when they see each other's comments on Facebook, maybe like, oh my gosh, I never knew they believed or thought this. I don't want anything to do with them anymore. I'm seeing these results across the country. I've had pastors say, you know what, people are getting mad because I'm saying this, or our church is doing this, the session voted on this. Right now, we can either come together and try to solve these problems and try to help serve our community the best way we can, or we can circle the wagons of our own opinions and ideas and just wall ourselves off and separate more and more and get more and more isolated and segregated in our own versions of reality. And it's going to be tough. That task, that temptation of just separating ourselves is going to get greater and greater in the next couple of months, as more decisions have to be made about school and sports and church and business. As election things ramp up, there's going to be a greater temptation to demonize each other and draw lines and create sides. And I know there are certain things that you may believe that are core values to you and say, I have to draw a line here. This is what I believe is the right way to go. I get it. I think everybody has that. But in the midst of that, can we still create space in our lives for people of difference? Are we willing to go and still be in relationship with people who may think very differently when it comes to thoughts on the virus, thoughts on reopening, thoughts on politics, thoughts on race, whatever it is? Because we need each other right now. As Paul says, the eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you anymore. We need each other. And right now, it's really easy to say, I don't need you. I'm better off without you. Because I saw what you think, or I see what you're doing, and it's just not compatible anymore. This coronavirus is making us all be more innovative. Innovative with how we do business. Innovative with how we create fun for our families. Innovative on how we do church. The next step is thinking how we can be innovative in our communities, in our relationships, to find ways to support and be together, even in the midst of differences that seem to violate our core values. That's what's going to be important here in the next few weeks and months. So I ask you to give each other grace and compassion. Try to understand where everyone is coming from, knowing that they might come from a very different context. Their fears are just as real as your fears sometimes, even though you may be scared of two different things. How can we listen to one another and care for one another? And that's a church. I sure do love worshiping, and I love worshiping together. But is there something else more important we can be doing right now? Is there ways we can serve our community and bring people together and try to learn and understand each other? Maybe that's the real mission coming up, because that's going to be the test we're all going to face here in the next several weeks and months. Can we stay together? Can we be with and for each other as a church, as a community, as a nation? Because we can be united and stand together. We can all stand on our own and eventually fall. Jesus, when he was saying goodbye to his disciples, just gave them one new commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. Jesus loved each of us where we are. He didn't always agree with the disciples' actions, their choices, but he loved them nonetheless. That's our commandment for these days. May we love one another as Jesus loved us, to be with and for each other, with courage, with strength, with humility, with grace, with service, and with direction. It doesn't mean we're always silent. It doesn't mean anything goes. But it means I will love you nonetheless. And I respect and love you enough to share with you what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. And I hope you will do the same with me. As we move forward trying to find clarity, let us move forward in love and humility and honesty. And so I do hope I'll be able to see you at one of these outdoor services if you feel comfortable with coming. If you don't feel comfortable with coming, that is completely okay. We will continue to have live stream worship. On the Tuesdays, we have the outdoor service. We're not going to film a special additional chapel service. That's just asking too much of Sue George, trying to film and edit and put together 3 services in 3 days. That's just a lot. We may try to film the outdoor service on Tuesday, but there's no guarantee how that's going to turn out due to the sound system, the ambient noise of cars and trains. So we'll have the Sunday live stream. On days we don't have an outdoor service, we will film a special chapel service that's online. But on Tuesdays we do have the outdoor service. We want to focus our attention on that to make it good. And again, we may try to film it, but we have no guarantees on how that's going to turn out. So I hope you are able to come to one of those services if you feel safe, if you feel willing, if you are available. And then look for a survey after those services and share with us your honest thoughts and feelings. And we're going to try to keep those things in mind. But as a church, as a task force, as a session, we're going to try to make decisions based on what's the next right thing we can do. We're not just going to listen to the politics of any party or state or whatever. We'll keep that in mind. But right now, churches are still exempt from a lot of those orders, so they don't always demand whatever from us. We want to make the right decision for us, based on the science as we understand it, based on the community needs, based on our particular context. We're going to make, and we pray and hope we can make, the next right decision for Derry and for central Pennsylvania and for our country and for our lives right here at Derry. And so we ask you to pray for wisdom and courage and guidance for the task force and for the session, for the board of Derry Discovery Days as they're having to make tough decisions. Pray for us as we try to do the next right thing. And we'll pray for you as you try to do the next right thing for your family, your business, your community. And may God be with us and for us, giving us everything we need in these days. And may God bind us together until and even after we meet again.